Hello everyone. Today we will discuss about introduction to metabolism, metabolites and metabolic pathways. Introduction to metabolism, okay, metabolites and metabolic pathways. So first coming to the metabolism, when you say metabolism, it is a process, it is a biochemical process found in most of the living cells, most of the you can say the living cells, okay, in a controlled way, you say, and and are happening in a controlled way, controlled way. That means where and when is to be produced, and where it's to be conducted, and what components are going to be inside, what components to be inside, which is essential for the cell or the living system. Okay, so that will be decided by the cell itself with the presence of or the help of certain genes and its expression. So that's why I'm writing here in a controlled way. Okay, in is a living cells, or in a biological system, or in a living system, I can say living system. Okay, this is the first one. Second thing, when you say metabolism, okay, and when you are saying it is a controlled way, even if the rate is also controlled way, that means for the metabolism the cells, they have, you say, genes, okay, to regulate the process of metabolism, process of, you say, metabolism, and also several proteins which are synthesized from these genes, okay, so called, as you say, um, enzymes, or you can say biocatalyst to regulate these biochemical reactions. Biochemical reactions. Do you know about the biocatalyst? Catalysts are those substances which regulate the chemical reaction that we have studied in the chemistry. And here, as these you say enzymes, or these proteins which are involved in the regulation of, you say, biochemical reaction. That's why we are saying it is a biocatalyst. Okay, biocatalyst, this one. And this is what the, you say, metabolism is. Okay, but this you see, genes and the biocatalysts are not enough to, you say, conduct the metabolism process inside the cell or in a living system. There are several requirements are there which are much more essential for the, you say, conduction of different metabolic processes inside the cell, okay, or living system. So what are the requirements? First requirement is a reactant. Here the reactants are mostly biomolecules like proteins, lipids, carbohydrates. If you are going to take the example of all these things, like you say, proteins, carbohydrates, carbohydrates, and you can say the lipids, and other molecule also, other, you say, molecules. The second is that like, the enzymes, or here you can say biocatalyst, biocatalyst, or you can say regulatory proteins, you can say regulatory uh, regulatory proteins. Okay, they will regulate the you say metabolism process. Also they regulate the rate of you say metabolism reaction or direct of you say biochemical reaction. They will regulate the whole process of metabolism. Okay, like the processes are like rate. They also control the rate of metabolism. Okay, apart from that they also control the conversion of the compounds, conversion of you see compounds or metabolites during the metabolism process. Okay, this is the second department. Coming to the third one, I'm writing here. Coming to the third one, energy molecule. Energy you say molecules. Energy molecules like ATP, this is very it's a common use energy currency in most of the living cell. Apart from that, NADPH, NADPH, FADPH, or you can say FADPH, FAD or FADPH, FADPH. Okay, and then nucleotide triphosphate, adenosine triphosphate, nicotinamide adenine is a diphosphate, and flavin adenine nucleotide. Okay, there is FAD, NAD, and ATP. Okay, adenosine triphosphate. These are energy molecules. And the fourth one, I can write here. The fourth one is the factors, like pH, temperature. Apart from that, light intensity also, light intensity, different salt concentration I can write here, etc. There will be many more factors which can influence the metabolism process. Okay, but some of the you say important parameters which has to be in the stable condition in a definite range, so that the metabolism process can be conducted smoothly. Okay, so these are the pH, temperature, and light intensity. Particular light intensity here, I'm writing because of you say very essential for the photosynthesis process, in the plants. And the plants need to conduct different photosynthesis process. Okay, there will be light, there will be 680 nanometer, 7 nanometer light is essential for the photosynthesis process. If you go for the 680 nanometers, that is actually photosystem 2, or if you have studied the photosynthesis process. Okay, in photosynthesis 2 there will be requirement of 680, and in photosystem 1 there will be requirement of 700 nanometer. And but as a whole, the plant requires the range of you see 400 to 700 nanometer, 400 to 700 nanometer. Okay, so called as PAR. Okay, that is photosynthetically active radiation. The range is 400 to 700 nanometers. So that is what the you say metabolism and the requirements of metabolism is. Coming to its type, we are writing here the types of metabolism. Types of you say metabolism. When you say types of metabolism, okay, there are different type of metabolism are there. Okay, so but here we will discuss the types of metabolism based upon the formation of products. That means based upon the you say product structure, and molecular weight. This is also related with the product structure, because the more complex will be the structure, the more molecular weight will be found. Okay, so the product structure, okay, the more complex, more you say molecular weight will form. Okay, so based upon that, actually there you have two type. One is you say anabolism process, anabolism process, and another one is say catabolism process, catabolism process. When you say anabolism process, it's a synthesis process, it's a constructive process, it's a constructive process, or you can say synthesis process, synthesis process, or you say production process, production of you say complex molecules, complex molecules, complex molecules. Okay, and here usually for the formation of the complex molecule they need you say energy. So here you can write here another point, they need energy. Okay, so energy is required, energy is required for this process, for this process. Okay, whereas in case of catabolism process, when you say kata means you say breakdown, you say breakdown process, that means it's a destructive process, destructive process, destructive, or you say breakdown process, down process, in which what will happen, in which the complex molecules, complex molecules are you say degraded, you can say degraded, degraded to produce, to produce you say smaller molecules, smaller molecules. Okay, usually this process, that means this you say uh, catabolic process, it is a energy yielding process, that means energy is liberated here, energy is liberated in this process. Okay, so these are the two basic type of you say metabolism processes. Okay, then coming to another type, we have completed the metabolism and its type and its requirement. Coming to the metabolites, when you say metabolites, these are nothing but, these are nothing but the molecules, molecules, or you can say metabolites, or you can say biomolecules, or you say compound, you can write here compounds, compounds which are generated, which are generated during metabolism process, during metabolism process, whether it is anabolism process or whether it is catabolism process, but some of the structures, some of the compounds are generated during that process. Okay, that is so called you say metabolites. Okay, and if you see a process of you say metabolism, what is going to happen here, like in the metabolism process, reactants are there, reactants are there, and these reactants are converted to say products. Okay, if I taking the example of biochemical reaction, so and here this is regulated by you say enzymes and some other factors also. Okay, like we have discussed earlier. So when this reactant, this is also a molecular form, molecular form. Now when this molecular form is converted to product, it has to you say go through a different intermediate molecular structure, intermediate mediate molecular structures during its conversion to the, or during the formation of you say final product, which is also a you say a molecule, or you can say compound. Okay, so this will be called, you say, final metabolite, and this will be called, as you say, intermediate metabolites, because they are generating at the intermediate level. Okay, intermediate metabolites. And here you can consider here initial is a reactant molecule. Okay, now this intermediate metabolite and you say final metabolite, these two are considered to be the primary metabolite. Why? Because when these reactants which are fast, or you say initial, they are involved in the you say metabolism process and generating the products and intermediate in the fast phase. This fast phase of reaction is nothing but, you say, primary reaction is nothing but, you say, primary, you say, metabolic pathway, and from this primary metabolic pathway the primary metabolites are generated. So this whole process where the primary, you say, metabolites are generating, so called as primary metabolite pathway, primary metabolite molite pathway. Okay, so now the question is, you say, why this metabolites is to be produced in the cell. Okay, there will be different purposes are there for which these primary metabolites or the metabolites or the secondary metabolites are produced. Okay, purpose. There are different purposes are there for the production of, you say, material. First, you can consider it may be any purpose of, you say, production of, you say, production of, you say, metabolites. Like, it may be primary, or maybe you say secondary. CONDAY, secondary. Purpose is there are n number of purposes are there for the production of this metabolites, but we will mention very few here. Like you say growth, like development, like reproduction, like defense, like in so thermal regulation, like for pigmentation. Okay, like for, you see, different, you say, actions of, you say, moderation, you can say moderation. Okay, like there will be some processes are also there, like in a moderation. I can write here also regulation, because some are also involved in the regulation processes. Okay, so apart from these are different type of, the very, you say, important type of, I have mentioned very important type of, you say, purposes. Okay, there are many more are there, like I'm here etc, many more are there. Okay, so this is what the, you say, purpose to which these metabolites are to be produced. And for the production of these metabolites, there will be two, you say, pathways that we are studying in the biology. That is, one is, you say, primary metabolite pathway, like we have discussed here, primary metabolite metabolite pathway. Another one is the secondary metabolite metabolite, you say, pathway, like we are discussing here. So this one is actually primary metabolite pathway. Why? Because it's the initial, at the beginning when the cell they are going to utilize the biomolecules which are serving as the reactants, and they are producing different you say products. So during their conversion in the first phase, they are actually generating different type of intermediates also. So as a whole, these intermediate metabolites and these final metabolites which are synthesized in the first phase of biochemical reaction, I can write here you say first phase, you say first phase, first phase you say biochemical reaction, biochemical you say reactions, okay, or pathways you can say. This sequential reactions are happening here, okay. That's why you can say this is the pathway. Sequential reactions which are happening in the controlled way, in that condition we can use the term you say pathway. So here that will be the you say primary metabolic pathway that we discussed there, okay. Coming to secondary metabolic pathway. When you say secondary metabolite pathway, okay, this secondary metabolite pathway, coming to you say secondary metabolite pathway. In the secondary metabolite pathway, what is going to be synthesized? The secondary metabolites are going to be synthesized here, okay. The secondary metabolites pathway, the secondary metabolites are synthesized here, okay. That is why you can say this the secondary metabolic pathway, because the secondary metabolites are synthesized here. Now again we have a question, what are the secondary metabolites, okay. So in order to define the secondary metabolites, these are the these are the compounds, or you can say the molecules which are synthesized synthesized okay, or you can say obtained from the the primary metabolites through different sequential biochemical reactions or you can say pathways in a controlled manner, in a controlled you say manner controlled manner. In that case, those compounds control manner, okay. So in that case, we can say these compounds, okay, are secondary metabolites. Secondary say metabolites. That means these secondary you say the secondary are nothing but their compounds or the molecules which are synthesized or often from the you say primary metabolites, okay, that we've discussed in the primary you say metabolic pathway through different sequential. These are also happening in you say different sequential order of you say biochemical reactions or so called you say pathways, okay. So in a control manner is like the primary metabolites that are happening in the control manner, like that these secondary metabolic pathways that are also happening in the control ways. And those compounds which are formed actually, those compounds were found in this type of pathway, secondary metabolic pathway, so called you say secondary metabolites. Then again here also a question that why and what are the purposes of the secondary metabolites and what are the purpose of this primary metabolite, because here if you see the purpose we have decided as a whole for the primary and secondary metabolites, out of these functions actually the growth, development and reproduction, these are controlled by you say primary metabolites, primary metabolite. Also energy yielding, another we can write here also. Here we can mention that is energy yield of energy generation. Okay, this is also controlled by, you say. So these four things, okay, is to be, you say, uh, is to be the main purpose for, you say, primary metabolites. That means these primary metabolites, they regulate these four processes, whereas the other process that we have mentioned here, like you said, defense, thermal regulation, pigmentation, okay, moderation and other things, that is actually, you say, controlled by, you say, secondary metabolites. Secondary metabolites. So these are the purpose secondary metabolites. Okay, so these are the, you say, purposes. Then we will also take some example, like you know, uh, primary metabolism. Suppose here the cell is taking, here inside the cell it is taking, you say, biomolecule, biomolecule through food, or maybe if it is plant or something else, food in case of heterotrophs. Okay, animals and all that, uh, phototrophs. Here I'm writing, I can mention the heterotrophs, the plots. So what about the type of food it is consuming? As a whole, what they are doing? They're going for oxidation process. Oxidation process. That means the processing of these food materials in order to, say, generate different type of metabolites. The aim is to produce the metabolites. Metabolites. Okay, so this oxidation process have, you say, number of, you say, reactions, number of pathways are there in many, you say, different type of cell. It may be any, writing here, cell, it may be a plant cell, it may be any, you say, animal cell, it may be any, you say, microbial cell, whatever the scenario is. The oxidation process here, if you go for, taking example, glycolysis, okay, lysis, glycolysis, Krebs cycle, oxidative phosphorylation, phosphorylation, there will be, you say, ETC also, okay, urea cycle also, in human urea cycle, that is also happening. Beta oxidation is also happening, oxidation, the lipid molecules, beta oxidation, we'll study this one. Okay, so these are considered to be the, you say, primary metabolic pathways. Primary metabolic pathways. Pathways. And here, based upon this primary metabolic pathways, the products which are generated, or the intermediates which are generated, that is called, you say, the intermediate compound, and products, final products, I'm saying here, final products. Those are serving, as you say, as a whole, they are serving, as you say, primary metabolite. Metabolite. Based upon these primary metabolites, the secondary metabolite pathways are conducted. Okay, like I'm writing it as a whole for the living system, for living cells of all, you say, plants, animals, and microbes. Okay, like it's a cyclic acid pathway, cyclic, cyclic, SHYKIMIC, cyclic acid, cyclic acid pathway. Okay, mevalonic acid pathway, uh, malonic acid pathway, beta lactam pathway, non-ribosomal pathway, where the non-ribosomal peptides are synthesized. Non-ribosomal is a pathway. Also, you can write here pentose sugar pathway, pentose sugar pathway, sugar pathway found in the human. Okay, basically the human. So all this pathway, if you consider, okay, all this pathway, okay, all this pathway are called, you say, secondary metabolic pathways. Secondary metabolic metabolic pathways. If you're gonna take example of, you say, primary metabolites and the secondary metabolites, I will just mention here a few example of, you say, primary metabolites. Here I will mention, like uh, suppose we are taking the glycolysis, where the glucose is converted, glucose is converted to, you say, pyruvic acid. You know there will be a 10-step reaction which will be there uh, when there is a conversion of glucose, one glucose molecule, to the, say, pyruvic acid, or you can say pyruvate. Okay, there will be 9 intermediates were generated. 9 intermediates are generated, and here will be the pyruvate. Okay, like, from the glucose 6 phosphate, fructose 6 phosphate, fructose 6 phosphate, then evaporated fructose 1 6 phosphate, then there will be, say, dihydroxy acetone phosphate, glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate, 3 phosphate. Again, there will be, you say, some other structures, like, you say, 3 1 3 phosphoglycerate, 3 phosphoglycerate, 2 phosphoglycerate, and there will be phosphoenol pyruvate, then in the last will be the pyruvate. So this is the whole reaction of, if you take the example of glycolysis, where the glucose is converted, where these intermediates, all the intermediates, you can consider as, you say, primary metabolites. Similarly from pyruvate also. So in all these reactions, the intermediates and the final product can be considered, you say, as, you say, primary metabolites. Whereas the secondary metabolites, which are not having any role in the growth, development, and, you say, uh, um, uh, that is your reproduction. Okay, so those are example, is secondary metabolites. Secondary, you say, metabolites. You can consider alkaloids. You can consider phenolic compounds. You can consider tannins. You can consider tannic acids. You can also consider beta lactam compound, beta lactams, antibiotics that are generated by the microbes, particularly fungus and the bacteria, particularly by the fungus mainly. You can consider curcumin. You can consider NRP, non-ribosomal peptides, non-ribosomal peptides. Okay, so this is a different example of, you say, what do you say, the secondary metabolites, which are actually synthesized in a different, you say, pathways. Okay, like cyclic acid pathway, you can have, you say, alkaloid and phenolics, like the beta lactam pathway, separate pathway is found in the some of the bacteria and fungus, where the penicillin and cyclosporin type of antibiotics are generated. And curcumin, that is present in the turmeric is a plant, or turmeric plant, the curcumin is there. And second thing, that NRP, that we don't have is on pathway, which are producing, let's say, NRPs. Okay, so these are the, you say, different secondary metabolic pathway. And one more thing, when we're saying that the secondary metabolic pathways are there in the, you say, microbes, and they are in the plants, and they are in the animals, and why these metabolic processes are present inside this living system, there is two reasons. One will, it may, there will be different, you say, hypotheses are there. One is maybe during the evolution, there may be, you see, maybe the influence of environment. You can say the exterior environment meant which propel, which actually should force this cell to persist inside that environment, and to, to persist in those environment, the cell need to produce a different type of metabolite. This is maybe the one reason. Second thing, in case of microbes, there will be some, it's a gene transfer, because when you're saying that different type of, their diversity of life forms are there, and they all are having different type of, say, secondary and primary metabolic pathways. So in that scenario, we can say there will be some, you say, genetic transfer methods are genetic transfer is a methods which are conducted naturally, which are conducted naturally, conducted naturally, okay, or maybe inherited, maybe in the form of inherited, inherited to, say, parent to offsprings, or in some cases there will be horizontal transfer, horizontal gene transfer. Also, one hypothesis also there, where from one organism, suppose I'm taking example of, say, bacteria, okay, maybe some gene will transfer from the bacteria to fungus, okay, when they are solving this similar type of, say, ecological interaction. So there may be a possibility, okay, so horizontal transfer may be one of these, genetic transfer, okay. So these are the hypotheses are drawn, that why, and why this is, say, in the living system, they are having a secondary or primary metabolite, you say. And another thing is that if you are considering the genetic level, the genetic transformation method is there, that means here particularly some, you say, genes, I can say cluster of genes, clusters of genes. That means those genes which are responsible for the production of different enzymes here, which are regulating the secondary metabolite pathway and the primary metabolite pathway. Usually they're in a cluster form. There's in a group form that were so-called as say biosynthesis of cluster genes. Biosynthesis of cluster genes. Of cluster genes. Cluster genes. Okay, so that means maybe it's a certain genes will be which are grouped together to produce this kind of, say, enzymes which are regulating different type of, say, secondary metabolic pathway and in the primary metabolic pathway. So for this video, this is what the metabolism process, metabolite process, and metabolites, and the different, you say, metabolic pathway process. So for different metabolic pathway, like we have mentioned here, we'll make different videos for that, in order to understand detail of these, you say, pathways, okay, both primary and secondary metabolite, okay, in different videos. Okay, thank you.